We are on. Hello, you are on Exhibit A, and I am excited to say that we're back in the conference room. We've been doing this by Zoom. We will continue doing many of ours by Zoom, but we thought today we would get back into the conference room because we've got something very serious and important to talk about. And helping us today are our AAA members, the American Armenian Attorneys Association, right here in the law office. Actually, we're the Schweitzer Law Partners Group. I keep forgetting that we changed the name of our firm recently. But we've got the two Monets with us. How are you, ladies?
Good morning, Dawn. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Morning, Dawn. We're good. Thank you.
So what I would like to do is to figure out how we're going to identify the two of you as we're talking, like in the office. And for our audience, you should know that in the office we have Monet H and Monet K. And that's not meant to be derogatory in any way, but there could be some confusion. So let's segue into who you are, right? You've been on the podcast many times, but we've really never talked about your backgrounds, and I'm very proud to have you as members of our firm. Both ladies are originally from Armenia. They came over here when they were children, and let's talk about you first, Monet H. So how old were you when you came to America?
That's correct, Dawn. I was 9 when I moved here. I believe in 2000. I forget now. I've lived more than half my life here now, but I was 9 when I first came.
That is scary to me. Half your life, 2000. I mean, I was a grown man. I was an old man but in 2000, and that's half your life. Oh, my God. And here you are, this excellent attorney, may I say. I mean, both of these ladies are incredible, and I am not exaggerating at all. They're wonderful attorneys and stuff, but, you know, it's just time goes by, and here's somebody that came over here in 2000, age of 9, and she's SC grad, you know, really an awesome attorney. And, yeah, we got a lot to talk about, your background, and talk about the war, because that's what we're going to talk about today is the Armenian war that's going on right now, and both of them have very strong feelings about that. So, Monet K, how old were you when you came to America?
I was 7.5. Like Monet, I also came in 2000, so also half my life has been in America.
Okay. One thing I didn't ask either one of you, and it's kind of important to me because I'm freaky in nature, want to know about things. What part of Armenia are you from?
I'm from Yerevan, the capital.
The capital. So how big of a city is that?
It's pretty small. I mean, the population of Armenia is less than 3 million, so it's not that large. And obviously, Yerevan is the biggest city, but Gyumri is the second largest city in Armenia.
How many people do you think are in that city?
Not that, it's not a lot. I mean, it's not LA times, you know. Like, I think the diaspora in Los Angeles far exceeds the entire population of Armenia.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You probably know that I have some Polish in me, and Chicago, which was a real place for immigrants to go to, you know, back in the turn of the last century. It is said that there's more Polish people in Chicago than the city of Warsaw. Wow. Yeah, it's kind of an American story, you know. What city is your family from?
So I'm from a smaller city that's about 20 minutes from Yerevan. It's called Hakobyan.
You're from the suburbs?
Kind of, yes.
Farm?
No, it's a city. It's about a 20-minute cab ride from Yerevan, so it's much smaller. I went to elementary school there. I remember my school. I went there till, I think I didn't finish 2nd grade, but that's when I moved here.
You mean you never finished 2nd grade?
I did. I actually skipped 3rd grade entirely.
Well, that's because you're smart. Okay.
So when I moved here, for 6 months, I didn't go to school.
Oh my God. You know, wait a minute. Can we check the employment records of this lady? Did she really have a law degree? Oh, that is hilarious. So the two of you never really knew each other until you were in SC together, correct?
No, actually, we did. We went to undergrad together at UCLA. Monet's younger than me, so we weren't too close, but we knew of each other, definitely.
Okay.
I think we took a class together at one point.
Interesting. Have either one of you been back to Armenia as adults?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah, I went twice. I went in 2012 with a program to volunteer with children there and open up camps. And then I went, last time I was there was in 2015, so 5 years ago.
Okay.
I was actually there exactly a year ago in August of 2019. I was there for about 10 days, and that was my first time going back.
Okay, so my family's been in this country for, I guess, years and years and years. Of course, I'm mixed like most Americans are, and I've got some people that came over as immigrants through Ellis Island, but a big part of my family has been here for, I guess, for years. So I don't know what the feeling is like when you are born and lived in Armenia. You come over as a child, then you kind of finish, your childhood here, get your profession, and then go back to the old country, for lack of a better term. What was it like?
So I actually have a lot of family there from my mother's side. It was definitely a surreal experience. I did remember a lot of the places that I visited as a kid, but a lot of things were new to me. Armenia's changed a lot since I lived there.
How so?
It's more modernized now. It's nicer. The government has changed, so things are different. It's more modern. The restaurants, the people, the mindset. But for me, my favorite part was actually visiting historical landmarks that I didn't get to see as a kid, because when you live there, you're not visiting all these tourist places so a lot of historic landmarks I hadn't seen before, and I got to reunite with my cousins who I hadn't seen in almost 20 years. And so my grandma, my aunts, my cousins. We stayed at an Airbnb at someone's house in an old village in Armenia called Datev, and it was definitely I would definitely go back. Hopefully we can all go back, and
I want to go. Honestly,
you should.
I do.
Farm trip.
We're going to talk about the surging population of Armenians within the Pasadena-Glendale area. And what that means is that there's a lot of people that I do commerce with. I mean, my personal banker is from Armenia, also an SC grad, a wonderful lady, and she went back for a vacation. And I was thinking, gosh, I'd love to do that. It sounds so wonderful. When you went back, what was it like?
I mean, it's very emotional because, like Mane said, when you're a kid, maybe you go, but it's different because these are mostly touristic sites. And then when you go this time, you really appreciate all the history and all the architecture that you have, and going to the churches and learning about, the Christianity and how it was built and all the different wars from the Armenian Empire that have happened. And it's very emotional to be there.
I could only imagine. I love history, and of course, in preparation for today, I read, and there's an incredible article, or I guess it's a page that's on Wikipedia about Armenia, as well as Armenian Americans. Learning about Armenia, I learned that it's got one of the oldest countries that have Christianity, as part. And it's a really long tradition. Really cool. My favorite page was the Armenian Americans, and because I always wonder, I'm from Chicago. I'll have to say that I didn't really grow up with Armenians, and I've learned that from reading today that your country's immigration, or the people from your country coming into America, is coming in waves. It's part of the American story. I didn't know that there was Armenians in this country from the 1600s. There were Armenians in the Civil War. Apparently some very prominent surgeons were Armenians, and they came in over waves, I guess, during the 1880s because of some problems. And then after World War I, which was the genocide, big wave there. And then recently, there's been a huge surge. I've learned that the population of the American Armenians has more than doubled since 1980. And that doesn't mean anything to you because you guys came during the wave. But it's really incredible for people that aren't in the Pasadena-Glendale area. I guess Glendale is like the center. It's the center of living for Armenians, and there's no doubt about that. I mean, it's really cool. It's one of the surging immigrant populations in America. At least here on the West Coast. And we've seen the Chinese immigrants and from all other countries and stuff. But it's really fascinating to see what kind of go-getters Armenians are and stuff, and it's really cool. So we thought today we would talk about something very serious, and that is about what's going on right now in Armenia. And I know that Mane Age, you recently hosted a lunch here at the office in order to get awareness of the problem and maybe even to raise some money and stuff. So could you tell us what's going on over there right now?
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the solutions to not fixing, but helping resolve this problem that's going on is raising awareness, raising money. I think the outpouring of support from the diaspora here in Los Angeles and all around the world has been significant. We've raised over $80 million so far. But what's going on right now dates back to the early 1900s. As you mentioned earlier, the Armenian genocide, which took place in 1915, over 1.5 million Armenians were killed at the hands of the Ottoman Empire. Following this, a lot of Armenians, escaped through Syria and Lebanon, and that's why we're everywhere. There's Armenians in Europe, Germany, Brussels,
Colombia.
Colombia,
Big
yeah,
population
there
there.
is.
Yeah.
In the U.S., obviously California, New York, Boston. There's a big Armenian population in Boston. So I'll stick to the facts because the history can get a little complicated. But essentially in 1921, Armenia has been, succumbed to the control of many empires and nations throughout the years. So in 1921, Stalin essentially drew this imaginary line and, for lack of a better word, gifted this nation called Artsakh or Qarabakh to Azerbaijan in order to, please Turkey. And this was done against the wishes of the people living there, because even dating back to the 5th century, Artsakh was and has always been part of Armenia. It's had an Armenian population, almost 98%, 99%. There was a census done in 1823 where over 90% of the population was Armenian. So this was given to Azerbaijan, and when the Soviet Union fell, a lot of nations or countries now, including Azerbaijan and Armenia and 15, 16 other nations that used to be part of the Soviet Union, declared their independence and became a Republic of Armenia or various other countries that are now independent. And Artsakh in 1991 declared its independence by a referendum, and I believe this was voted, like 99.8% voted yes to gain their independence. And at that time, I think, almost 98% of the people living there were Armenian. However, this Declaration of Independence was not recognized, hasn't been recognized by Azerbaijan, even though the people there have declared their desire to live independently, and they've been following, they've been living as if they're part of Armenia. The president there is Armenian. Almost all of the people living there are Armenian. And so a war broke out, similar to the one that's currently taking place today, in 1988, which lasted until around 1992, at which time Artsakh was successful. In 1994, there was, in May of 1994, there was a ceasefire agreement between Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Artsakh. And this ceasefire has been breached many times. And, Mane can talk about this a little bit more, but there's been conflict surrounding Artsakh ever since the ceasefire. As early as 2016, there was a 4-day war that broke out, again, over this region. And these people just want to live in peace. They just want to be their own nation. And what's been going on now is civilians are being bombed and displaced. The capital of Artsakh, Stepanakert, is pretty much in ruins. People have nowhere to live. I have family in Armenia that's currently hosting actually several families from Stepanakert that have been displaced because they have nowhere to go. A couple days, I think yesterday, a church was bombed, and
Like a really old church.
a very, very church going back to biblical times, because like you said, Armenia dates back to biblical times and was the first sovereign nation in 301 to actually recognize Christianity. So there's definitely a lot of ancient landmarks that are being destroyed, civilians are being targeted, and people just want to live in peace, and a lot of us view this as an attempt at a second genocide.
Yeah, so adding to that, from what I heard, maybe even something you and I talked about, Monica, is that there might be somebody trying to take advantage of COVID, thinking that nobody's going to care now because, we've got a lot of problems over here and throughout the world, and suddenly there's an attack.
Right. I mean, the genocide happened under, during World War I, and so all the nations were fighting in World War I, so it kind of, I guess, got stepped to the side. No one was coming to support Armenians in that land, and so it just happened. And now with COVID and with all of the different, I think, nations and trying to figure out what they're doing in their countries, and then all of the like NATO and EU, it's very difficult. No one has really said anything other than there needs to be a resolution, which I think anyone can agree that there needs to be a resolution, but there hasn't been any affirmative steps from any of the countries to really come to a resolution or come to an understanding, and come to kind of figuring out what really has been happening throughout the time, as Mane H mentioned, and the breaches of the ceasefire that have been happening since 94 onward. No one has really stepped up and said anything.
Yeah, let me educate our audience a little bit about where we're talking about. We're not talking about Armenia. What did I call this before? The mainland of Armenia.
I think it's people refer to it as Armenia proper.
Yeah. I can't even pronounce it. Go ahead.
Azerbaijan.
Okay. It's a country, a sovereign nation, and there's a part within there that has a very large, relatively speaking, Armenian population. In there, you have this enclave of Armenians. And so that's kind of the thing about get out of my country, or this is our land. And so it's a struggle over territory, right?
Correct. One thing to remember is that Armenia is landlocked. So Armenia is surrounded by Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. There's no ocean. There's no land port. There's no exit really from Armenia. It's quite literally in the center of all of these countries.
Okay.
So the southern part of Armenia is this land where we refer to as Artsakh, but it's now Nagorno-Karabakh, and that land was the land that was gifted to Azerbaijan in 1921 by Stalin. On that land, according to a 2005 census, 99% of people were Armenian. So there hasn't really been a large population of Azerbaijani people on that land, and in fact they didn't even partake in the referendum when Artsakh declared its independence after the fall of the Soviet Union. So we're really talking about land and this dispute over land, but keeping in mind that these territories are very close to each other. There's not enough distance between each other. So if missiles are coming in and they're attacking Stepanakert, they're attacking civilians.
Yeah, and the fires are being stoked by outsiders, presumably, right?
Well, Azerbaijan, essentially Turkey is funding the war for Azerbaijan. It's giving aid, military equipment, and Armenia is a population of 3 million people. Turkey's
10, I think they're
10
about
billion?
Yeah, their GDP, and they allocate, I think, 40 billion to their military.
So you're talking about a David and Goliath type of a situation, and
right.
It's just an impossible way to defend, and that's why I think that you're doing your best to try to provide protection. Is what it sounds like. So what I've read is that there's Armenians throughout the world that are traveling back to the homeland to try to help in some way or another. Do you have any friends or know any contacts with people that are doing that?
Definitely. I know of at least 3 people who have purchased one-way tickets, are going to fight if they're allowed to. I also have like I mentioned, I have family in Armenia, and I have a first cousin who's actually a commander in, he's defending a different part of the border, so he's not directly involved in this conflict, but a lot of his, friends and colleagues have been called and have died, so many people are dying. So it's, I think the support is great. The outpouring of support, monetary aid, and people just willing to give their lives.
Who's the biggest ally of Armenia right now?
That's an interesting question, and that's a very complicated question.
Go ahead and answer it.
I think that we can one way say Russia is an ally. However, historically, Russia has been kind of, under the guise of keeping the peace, been funding both Azerbaijan army and Armenia army.
Wow.
That's a little complicated. This morning, there's news that Russia invited, Azerbaijan and Armenia to come to a talk. I understand that, as they're talking, Stepanakert is still being cluster bombed. So that's still happening. It's hard to say who Armenia's ally is. France has been supportive. There's been countries also that have, in accepting the genocide and saying, yes, it happened, have been allies. But in terms of monetary aid or military aid, that's very hard to do. Iran has said that they will support. So
Support who?
Support Armenia.
Okay.
And it's a complicated question to answer, but minimal allies, almost none, definitely none within that region. Georgia is not an ally to Armenia, despite being another Christian nation. So it's really a landlocked country with minimal resources, minimal population, and
Little empathy from other countries.
Right.
Let me ask you this: how's the United States doing in supporting this? Supporting Armenia during this?
I think, people have tweeted that both sides need to de-escalate the conflict. But like many of us have been saying, if Armenia stops defending itself, we're, essentially gonna
Perish. You perish.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's not a matter of us de-escalating. That's not how we look at it. There's been some, the U.S. has made statements, internationally, other countries like Monet mentioned France, and but no one's actually, done anything like substantial.
Okay. Outside of war, what do you think a peaceful resolution could look like?
I mean, I'm not skilled in, political studies, but I think that the people of Artsakh have declared their independence. They've stated numerous times that they want to be independent. They've had a democratic, quote unquote, de facto government for quite some time. After the fall of the Soviet Union, almost all of the 15, 16 countries that belonged in the Soviet Union did the same thing. This is really no different. And so we just have to understand that, and let people live, the way I see it, the people of Artsakh don't want to fight. They are, tired. There's not a single family, and I visited Artsakh when I went back in 2012, and I was told that there's not a single family in Artsakh that hasn't lost a son or a husband or a brother, and even in 2012, when I went, you could still feel it. You could feel like the remnants of war. You could, my dad's brother actually passed away in that war, so you could feel that, pain still in the country and in the people. So, we're just living peacefully, and, let that be.
Okay. Very sad. It's almost a no-win situation, because you've got one country saying, hey, you're in our territory and we want to take it back. Another country saying, this was, granted to us. We're peaceful. Why can't we coexist? And, one side's resorting to war, and is that ever going to stop? And if it does, how's that going to look? So as family law attorneys here in Pasadena, you do have Armenian clients. Both of you do. I know that Manike, you actually have a client whose husband is in Armenia right now. How does that affect your ability to handle the case?
It's very difficult. I mean, one, process of service is very complicated internationally. We do have to follow The Hague, but it's complicated because sometimes, the California court really wants you to personally serve, which is the issue that we're having now. And, trying to do that in the midst of all of this, including COVID, in the backdrop, it's very difficult because, it's such a complicated case now.
Which started off as an easy case.
It started off as a very easy case. And I would have to say the hardest part about this is service. Once we get past that, there's really nothing to, litigate, quote unquote. But, that's hard. And it's very interesting because the Thursday that I handed the client all the papers and kind of explained how we're going to do the personal service and what needs to get done, I mean, the Saturday night, all of this started. And my client also has family in Armenia. So it's a very complex matter in terms of, I want to call her, I want to follow up, but I'm very, sensitive to what she is going through, what her family is going through, where her husband is and what region he is. And if he even was drafted to go fight, I mean, it's really tough.
Yeah. I'm practicing family law. I represent people from around the world, and I have represented a lot of Armenians that have lived around the world. And, you hear about conflicts overseas, but they really come to life when you have contact with people that, like I had a client that was an Armenian lady that after the divorce, she went back to, I think it was Beirut, and then all of a sudden, you're hearing about the conflicts over there and stuff. And it's like, oh, that poor, I worry about her. I haven't had any contact with her since then and stuff. So, I just know that for your families, and your friends and your clients and everything, the two of you are very concerned about this. And Mana H, you've tried to bring some awareness to this issue. What could the people here in our community do in order to assist the effort that you're asking to?
I think the biggest thing, obviously, is, to raise awareness, to post on social media, which actually, I don't know if you've seen that documentary, Social Dilemma, that talks about.
I did, yeah.
And I haven't watched it myself, but I could only imagine that what's happening today with Azerbaijan using cyberbullying to attack celebrities that have posted support for Armenia and have taken down their postings because they've been cyberbullied, they've been threatened. A lot of my Armenian friends who are very active on social media have received disgusting messages about, we're going to kill you and we're going to watch you die. And I think, it's crazy to me what's happening now. It's like we're not only fighting physically, but now it's become this sort of social media war where we have to defend ourselves. Armenia Fund, which is one of the biggest nonprofit organizations that's been collecting donations, was, not hacked, but some people out there created a similar website, a phishing website, and they were trying to, divert these donations to go through them. And I'm sure some people donated to the wrong place until it was realized what was happening. So I think just speaking the truth, sticking to the facts, not bullying people, but just speaking our truth, letting people know what's happening and gaining international support. There's been marches. I think yesterday there was
in DC
a big march in DC, near the White House, and unfortunately we couldn't go. There's been marches in Brussels. Like I don't even know there was a big Armenian population there, but that was very cool to watch. So I think just, aside from monetary aid, not everybody's capable of doing that, but we've been sending supplies to kids. Winter is coming to Armenia. It gets very cold there. So warm clothes, school supplies, clothing. So we've literally been doing anything we can to send support, but I think just recognition, speaking the truth, and getting our story out there is number one.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think that we've kind of come to the end here, but let me just say on behalf of these two fine attorneys and Armenian Americans that our heart goes out to all of the families and people that are suffering over there, and also the people that are in our community, all the Armenians in our community. I just imagine that driving around and associating with people locally, there's a different feel right now. I mean, it's like, what else could go wrong? You know, we had fires, we had COVID, we've got elections. You know, I mean, one thing after another, and now this is probably the worst of all. So, you know, just, we understand, you know, and God willing, things will get better. So thank you again for joining us on Exhibit A, and we'll see you next time.